Weather Wagers. We are back for another fun episode here today. If you've been following along with ABC 27, my name is Dan Tomaso. My normal weather cohort, Mr. Brett Thackeray, has been vacationing and now cruising along the Atlantic coastline, or excuse me, not Atlantic, Alaskan cruise line there off of parts of Alaska, but also, I believe, the Aleutian Islands. So, in the middle of some pretty cold water and some colder weather, but it is football season here on Weather Wagers. We'll get into that a little bit. Hence the backgrounds that you see today. Mr. Dave Shiner is also along too. You're filling in for Brett admirably. We had a nice little episode last week, and there's been a lot going on.
Yeah, we're in the thick of the baseball season. Football's about to kick off. Let's get into it, man.
Yeah, and by the way, we're going to get more into college football when Brett returns. We're kind of saving that for him because that is his forte. He likes to pretend he's a baseball guy, but sometimes I think his patience is tested by baseball, where he's more week to week with college football. But I wanted to start out, and I'm sure you've seen some of this if you've been paying attention to the sports world. If you're on social media, I feel like it was everywhere this weekend. Unfortunately, Major League Baseball tried to do a thing. They tried to do something very, very cool and unique with Bristol Motor Speedway, combining the love of NASCAR and baseball. And some of the backstory here is Major League Baseball is trying to expand to Nashville. It's kind of this untapped market for baseball in the Deep South. I mean, if you think about it, it's the Atlanta Braves, it's the Miami Marlins, and the Tampa Bay Rays. And that's all the Major League Baseball that the South has to offer. So in the near term, there is no expansion of Major League Baseball. So this is a special game. First time ever that Major League Baseball was going to be played on a NASCAR. Is it called an infield? I believe that's what it's called.
Yeah, it's the infield of the track. Yep.
Okay. So they basically retrofitted the infield of the track to serve as a baseball field with some temporary bleachers, but they were in the middle of setting a record attendance for a Major League Baseball game of over 90,000 people. And what else would happen but the weather?
Of course. Why wouldn't we have sunny blue skies for something that has that many people involved?
Yeah, and I've been mentioning this on the air. I've been filling in for Brett, and it's just amazing how much rain there's been to the south of us. And yet here in central Pennsylvania and much of Pennsylvania, it's been actually very dry the last 3 or 4 weeks. And so there's been a lot of rain in the south, and it really plagued this game. And there were so many people at this game that I guess had nothing else to do but drink water and try to eat hot dogs and nachos.
Sure, it was just water they were drinking down there?
Right. I mean,
I'm just saying.
I find that hard to believe. But at game time, or at least when they tried to play the game, the stadium ran out of water and the stadium ran out of hot dog buns and I believe nacho cheese from the pictures posted online.
Nacho cheese, man.
So, yes, the puns were unbelievable about what happened. And a lot of people were comparing this to the disaster of the Fire Island concert series where people showed up and got a cheese sandwich for thousands of dollars.
Not quite the same experience,
No.
but I get it. No, there was definitely some good Insta pics, I think, floating around of the situation.
Yes. So I bring this up, not that we're Atlanta Braves fans. In fact, we're kind of relishing in the fact that they fell off the face of the earth this season in some ways. I never like to see injuries, and they've had injuries across their starting pitching, but it was not what the Atlanta Braves bargained for, I think, when they decided to play this game. So I bring it up only because the name of this podcast series is Weather Wagers, and we follow how weather affects sports. And this was one, unfortunately, where it started raining around game time. The lead up to the game was fantastic, but they couldn't get it off the ground, and it just kept raining. So it was 1 inning and change. I think it was like an inning and 2/3, and they had to postpone the game to the following day. So weather affects sports, Mr. Shiner.
Yes, it does. I mean, and the podcast is aptly named for that. It's a shame too, because I know there's so much planning that goes into that, and you even worry, can you still replicate the event in a reschedule, because those venues are booked all through, and it, similar to when the NHL goes outside for some of these games that are really cool. They've had some great experiences where they've actually had some active snow during the game, which gives it a whole new element. And anytime you can bring something outside, or that is normally indoors, gives it a whole new feel. And this would have been cool to have a brand new setting for baseball. Like you can usually get away with putting a hockey rink in the middle of a baseball stadium or the middle of a football stadium. But like, this was one I was like, this might be pretty cool. And those grandstands are huge. And that's what they were pulling
Right.
for, was to get that big number of like 90 plus out there.
Well, and I was kind of cheering for it at first because I saw the flyover. I was getting excited, and then it was just like the balloon deflated,
Yeah, a
unfortunately.
lot of lead up to unfortunately a quick end there.
And part of the issue I was seeing online is, and it's something you don't think about in these events, but when these fields get retrofitted, the drainage isn't the same as a Major League Baseball stadium. So then the water's pooling up on the new infield. It's puddling up in the outfield. It's kind of like when you play Little League Baseball or when I play Teener Ball and everyone has to pitch in to get the field ready. That's what it looked like to me. It just looked like ponds in spots.
Yeah, a lot of scrambling, and I don't think they could quite squeegee off everything like they did with the golf tournament a couple weeks ago.
Right, right. So again, we will keep tracking any big weather events. This one actually kind of slipped below my radar because I wasn't thinking about Braves baseball. Sorry, Braves fans. We got our hands full with the Phillies, and I want to bring them up because the Phillies are winning series without the Angels and White Sox in the mix. Since the All-Star break, they have beaten some very good teams. They've beaten the Red Sox. They've beaten the Yankees. And then they have a great weekend series, a fun weekend series, almost a playoff preview at Citizens Bank Park with the very good Detroit Tigers. Now, perhaps they're not as hot as they were in the first half of the season, but weather was gorgeous for these games. There was no issue there, and the ball was flying, so
Oh
much
yeah.
so that since the All-Star break, the Philadelphia Phillies lead the major leagues in home runs and some power numbers too.
Well, I mean, both the big boppers for the Phillies have been coming through. Bryce is still on his
Yep.
multi-base hit streak he's got going here since he came back in early July, and Mr. Schwarber, I mean, it's bombs away almost every game recently, if not once or twice, like he showed us the other night.
I know we effused a lot of praise the last time for Kyle Schwarber on the podcast, but I feel like this is going to be a recurring theme if he keeps up this pace. Cal Raleigh was off to this torrid pace for the Mariners. Shohei Ohtani, he's slowed down a little bit because now he's focused on pitching because the guy does it all. Schwarber legitimately has a chance to not only be the home run king of Major League Baseball this year, but also an MVP candidate. And I just want people to, kind of sit back and enjoy this because I remember one of the seminal years for the Phillies before they really ascended, 2006. I mean, Ryan Howard was a show in of himself. I mean, the tanks that
Hmm.
he would hit, and Schwarber right now really reminds me of that.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely going on a tear, and I think they even made reference to, I believe it was his second home run in the game the other day, about like that's Ryan's territory because
Right.
that third deck up there and right, like not many people get up there, and Schwarber, he turns on those balls and they just go flying. I mean, you are correct in him being a legit MVP candidate. I mean, aside from the batting average, which we know he's going to be a 250, 270
Well,
guy, he's not going to
and by
be
the way,
hitting for
that's
350, you know. But
that's
when
the
you hit a
league
home
right
run
now.
damn near every game, it
Right.
doesn't matter.
Yeah. I
But
mean, with a team that needs the power, I mean,
yeah,
he's provided it and then some. And where would they be without him? Because they were, what, a month and longer without Bryce.
yep.
And the rest of the lineup, the outfield's not producing power. I mean, he has picked them up and carried them a lot of the way.
Yeah, and I mean, right now he's only second to our boy Cal here with 40 home runs. Riley's still at 42, but he's leading all of the majors with 94, with Pete Alonso right behind him at 91 for RBIs. And I'm like I said, the batting average isn't quite there, but legitimately outside of Shohei and Judge, who the only real difference with Judge is he's hitting for that average. He's
Right.
leading the league with like a 3.39, something like that. I mean, this guy Schwarber just makes a difference in a game. And even if it is one swing out of five, it's usually a game changer when he does it.
And most often against left-handed pitching, it
That
seems
too.
like, which is
Yeah,
just
for sure.
wild.
Yeah, I
His
think
numbers are great.
the stats against him with lefties is insane because no one else is quite producing like he is right now.
No, totally agree with you. And I hope they stay hot. They had a little bit of a clunker in the getaway game Wednesday. Beautiful day for baseball. It was kind of overcast. The ball wasn't traveling as much for the Phillies, although three-run home run for Kobe Mayo of the Baltimore Orioles. So the Orioles salvage a game there in game 3 of that series. But I just want to kind of refocus the schedule here for the Phillies. And perhaps we'll have to start talking about playoff odds in the next week. I mean, we're getting into that territory and odds to win the division, maybe odds for Kyle Schwarber to win MVP. This is weather wagers after all. We might have to bring up some of those numbers. But we go to Texas, and this is where things get tough. Texas is hot. They can hit the ball a little bit. Their pitching is elite right now, right up with the Phillies starting pitching. But we have Texas for 3 days on the road, no off day to the Reds on the road, who are a team that's on the outside looking into the playoff picture, but not that far behind the final wild card. So that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. And then we follow that up with 4 games in Washington against the Nationals. Now that team obviously is suffering. They're not playing very well. And the team was kind of gutted a little bit at the trade deadline. But then there's still no off day, and they come home to play the red hot Mariners. So the next off day isn't until the 21st. So this is a long stretch for this team, which unfortunately some of the news about Zach Wheeler and a stiff shoulder, perhaps maybe his mechanics are off a little bit, and that's why we're seeing some inconsistency. But you're going to need guys like Taijuan Walker. You're going to need Ranger Suarez to kind of refigure it out a little bit, and the bullpen to be tough as nails, because this is a pretty tough stretch. And I get the Nationals are considered a break, but it's on the road, and they could be pretty tired after the Rangers and Reds.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we're talking about, what, 13 straight games without a day off? I mean, that alone, I mean, you talk about the grind of baseball.
Yep.
Dear Lord. I mean, that's crazy. And, you know, even like we saw with Baltimore, I mean, they pretty much hammered Baltimore in those first 2 games. And then here you go, you know, they like to swing at the ball too. And, you know, major league players are going to make major league plays at some point. But if they can consistently continue to just win the series, gain that extra gain above 500 every series, you can't really complain.
No, and right now the Mets are on a losing streak, and they've lost 4 straight, I believe. So you got to make some hay while it's available, and I think they still can here through the weekend. I do think it gets pretty tough, because after the Mariners, they get another 3-game stretch at home against the Nationals, followed by a series at New York. And New York's not been a kind place to this team the last 2 years. So that's how we round out the month with the Mets, and then 4 in Atlanta against the Braves. So this really could be a defining stretch for the season here if they can separate with the Mets a little bit, or even if they just kind of maintain. If they play 500 ball through the end of the month, I'm actually going to be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, I think so. Like we said, that magical number of 15 over 500 that everybody's been kind of flirting with, you're seeing some of the better teams like the Brewers start to encroach onto that 20 plus, you know, mark. And like I say, if you can be 20 games over 500 rolling into September, that's where you want to be, because that's where your playoff teams are going to have to be. And if they can start to really put some of these games behind, now, like I said, it is a grind. There's a lot of games in a row there. But yeah, they come out of this fairly clean. It's almost playoff time.
It's almost playoff time. We got to start thinking that way. And speaking of the playoffs, one other team that always kind of gets my fur up a little bit because of the way they play the Phillies, we have to go to Miami at the beginning of September and watch out for those Marlins. They've had a little rough patch here against the Astros, but one of the hottest teams in baseball over the last 2 months. And they are firmly in the playoff picture, believe it or not. The Miami Marlins, the rebuilding Miami Marlins, are being pesky. So just kind of a fly in the ointment there.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at it right now. I believe they've only lost 9 games in the last month and a half, something like that. I mean, they're on a tear, and I mean, they're 1 game out of 500 right now as of our taping, and they're getting kind of. They're only a couple games behind the Mets at this point.
I know.
Which is kind of scary.
Don't tell Mets fans that, because they're ready to jump off a bridge. If you haven't paid any attention to the social media world of the Yankees and the Mets recently, it's a scary place. It is a really scary place right now. The Yankees actually are falling on harder times than the Mets, but you wouldn't know it.
Yeah, and also in that market, you know, it's going to be a bullseye on you all the time, just because of the media surrounding what New York sports is all about. And
yes,
they'll let you know it when you start to tank. I mean,
yes,
we know that from Philly for sure, but New York's
yes.
a whole nother ball game almost.
Yeah, and so this is a good reminder, if Brett's listening out there somewhere on his Alaskan cruise, this is the point I always make. You know, the ebbs and flows of the season, it's not flowing too well in New York. And I'm sure they'll be fine in the end, but it's heart-wrenching as a fan that you're watching your team in free fall mode and you want to know when you're coming up for air, and it's not always straightforward.
Yeah, like I said, it's a grind. We got to keep going through it, and you just got to pick up those wins when you can. But you start to, if this is the time of the season where you want to start playing your best baseball, not going the
Yes.
opposite direction.
Indeed, indeed. All right, I want to switch topics now to football, and
Here we
you and I
go.
have to be so ecstatic because it's here. Preseason football. I know it doesn't count. I get that, but I'm going to be paying attention tonight throughout most of the game. I'm going to try to watch most of it anyway. I have to be back up early for some dunk tank tomfoolery that I got involved with Mr. Brett. Um, Eagles preseason opener against the Bengals. Obviously, the starters don't play, but the Eagles have actually a fair amount of competition in camp. And I always feel like Howie does such a good job on the fringes of the roster. I mean, there are some good players here that are kind of unknown to most of the public. And I just wanted to highlight I keep seeing the names Jalix Hunt, Mora Ojimo, just impressing and making plays in every practice report I've read. And that's a great sign because the team's trying to replace Milton Williams at defensive tackle. Obviously, we let Josh Sweat go and some guy named Bryce Huff that we paid a lot of money to. It didn't work out. So the defensive line we mentioned last week, will they be as good? Can we get some prospects going here? And those are two names to follow here. I don't know how many snaps either one of them will get. Maybe Jalix Hunt doesn't play at all. But it's at least something to watch. I don't know if you have any impressions of the defensive line so far or what you're looking forward to, but that was one thing I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some competition and some holes that need to be filled. I've been hearing the same reports that Jalix has just been unreal at practice. I know Nolan Smith Jr. is going through his bounce back,
Yep.
but we're all hoping that he's gonna show out
Repeat
for
what he
us.
did.
Yeah, and Obo coming in as a new guy on the field. That is something that hopefully will get some good reps as well. I also have heard a lot of good things about the linebackers right now. I think we touched
Yes.
on it last time. Jahad
Odd.
Campbell is just turning heads, and that's what you want to see out of these rookies. That he might have a significant role if Nakobe Dean is not ready to go week one, and I don't think they were.
It doesn't seem like he
expecting
will
that.
be. So I think
Let's get him in there. But there's also a couple guys that have been nicked up here and there. Zach Bond, I guess, was held out of practice for a little bit. I think a lot of this stuff is precautionary.
Right.
I guess the newest one was AJ Brown's dealing with like a hamstring. No,
Yep.
for all reports are saying he's going to be fine week one. We're just taking it easy, But
he
I
knows the
do
playbook.
I do miss the days where we at least got like a quarter or two out of the starters, so you could see these guys. But with the 17-game season, we know that like almost the first 4 regular season games are our preseason anymore.
Right. Well, and by the way, speaking of the players that will play, Tanner McKee could be pretty exciting to watch, whether he gets a quarter and a half of play. He's super accurate as a passer. He's much different than Jalen Hurts. Obviously, more of a pocket passer and more of a pro-style offense guy. But to me, he's something exciting to watch. Will there be a battle of backup tight end? Hard to say at this point. I think that's a position that's unsettled. Wide receiver number 4, is there an opening? They have some talent, whether it's Johnny Wilson from last year and I.S. Smith. Will those guys contribute in any sort of way? All these questions could be answered over a couple of preseason games. And I get it's preseason. Defense, offense is vanilla, but there are some hidden gems in there that you can find out. Cornerback is another one, too, on defense. There's Ricks, there's Keely Ringo. What do they offer? Are they going to be able to step in? We're going into a season without Darius Slay. That's weird to say.
Yeah, for sure. First time in a long time, for sure.
I think there's a little bit of unsettledness there. They made a trade. They traded a backup defensive tackle this week for another backup corner from the Las Vegas Raiders. I did get that right. I was worried against Oakland.
There you go.
So again, there are some things to watch here tonight. Weather's not going to be a factor. It's going to be gorgeous in Philly. It's going to be raucous. I saw that somebody was already tailgating around midnight. It was actually right when I came into work and I opened up Twitter. It was the first thing I saw that some passionate Eagles fan was already out at the Link parking lots.
Wouldn't expect it any other way. Philly likes to get after it, even if it is a fake game.
Exactly, exactly. So to round things out, I just wanted to quickly mention we're going to hop into more Penn State activity coming up. Obviously, we're just getting very limited reports out of camp. We know that Saunders, who was a very key recruit at the time, he's a wide receiver and special teamer. Um, he unfortunately has yet another substantial injury. It seems like it's going to keep him out most of the year. I mean, James Franklin will not tell you much about injuries to begin with, but he
Mhm.
actually went out of his way to say that Saunders would be out. So it looks like there's going to be a little bit of competition perhaps for punt returner this year. But just in general, the hype continues to build about this team. Uh, Nicholas Singleton setting squat records, banter from national media folks about the upgrade at wide receiver. There we go. There's the lion. Right. I was wondering if you had that. I knew you probably had it at your disposal.
Still getting used to the new setup, but yeah, it's there.
Yeah. But we got a soundboard, so that's great. Um, some other things to keep an eye on. Tight end number one, Khalil Dinkins. Franklin went out of his way at the press conference to mention him, that no one's talking about him. We should talk about him. There's a lot to love about this team. You basically get 3 warm-ups to begin the season and put up some points and get the offense going, and then we hop right into Big Ten play, night game, Oregon. There's already anxiety building in my gut about it.
It's going to be the whiteout game. It's going to be hopefully a big crowd, national game. That's what you want for your big games. I think that's something that we kind of lacked last year was the big games were the noon kickoff games and didn't get to showcase that true whiteout environment as much as we'd like to.
Yeah, so that's exciting. We learned this week that it is going to be a big noon kickoff against Ohio State in the shoe. Kind of figured that was coming with the noon kick on Fox. So that's another announcement. I believe they're going with a blackout that game, which
funny how they steal an idea there, huh?
Yeah,
it worked out great for Maryland a couple years back, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that Friday night game where they built up all I think they even canceled classes to get the hype building, and we went in there and took care of business and then some. So I'm very excited. Coaches poll, we were not number 1. I believe we were number 3. It doesn't matter to me. I would rather build as the season goes on rather than being anointed number 1, because that comes with its fair share of problems. Some people still think Ohio State has a slight edge about us. Phil Steele, a friend of the program, though, picked Penn State to win the national championship, which is so rare to hear, but it's so great to hear at the same time.
Well, they got the returners coming back, and there is a lot of hype. They just need to live up to it, and this might be the the quote unquote year that Franklin gets to finally make his mark.
And I certainly hope so. I think it's going to be a very exciting year. We're going to get into predictions, talking about the schedule, talking about odds coming up. I mean, there's so much to get into over the coming weeks. I think Brett's going to have a free-for-all when it comes to college football. I mean, the hype shows are already out. There's an SEC show on Netflix that you can watch. Big Ten's putting out content. I mean, it just, the games are not here yet, but football is here. That I think is a fact.
And the weather will come with it soon enough, right?
Yes. We have this little cool down, but, of course, as things begin to ramp up, we're going to go right back into a heat wave. So for all those fall sports folks out there, if you're in high school or college and you're getting back to heat acclimation, good luck. It's going to be a tough couple of weeks before we hit September, I think.
Well, hey, we just know that it's around the corner, and just looking forward for the games to be played. That's the big thing, and it's that magical time of season where a bunch of the sports kind of align, and you get to watch your Phillies and Penn State possibly at the same time. I kind of this end of summer, beginning of fall. It's right when it's like the sweet spot, I think, for sports, at least the Pennsylvania sports in this area.
Well, and I have to wonder, too, the scheduling gods made sure that for preseason opening night for the Eagles was an off night for the Phillies. I think that was done on purpose.
You never know. You never know.
But I'm very excited to watch. So we'll have some commentary on that. I believe you're out of town next week, Mr. Shiner?
Yeah, going to take a little respite up in, the Poconos. But I know you and Brett will get back on this soon enough, and we'll be ready for the start of the season of college football here in a couple of weeks.
We certainly will. I really appreciate your efforts today. Not only is he working on the podcast here today, but he's helping with this dunk tank segment that Brett's concocted and the kiddie pool, too. So, Dave Shiner, really appreciate you pinch hitting for Brett, and we'll have you back on the show when you return.
Of course, man. Looking forward to it.
All right. So again, like, subscribe to our podcast, all of your favorite podcasting venues, whether it's Apple, whether it's Spotify, even on YouTube, the ABC 27 Plus app on your smart TV. We're there. We're everywhere. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Again, we'll be back next week. Episodes drop every Thursday. And boy, are we going to ramp up into football as well as talking about playoff baseball before you know it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Send us to next week, Mr. Shiner.